Welcome to Small Biz Life, episode 88. Want more customers? Improve website navigation.
Does this sound familiar?
Oh my God, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
Hey guys, welcome to another action-packed episode of Small Biz Life.
You are now currently on the edge of your seats. You're like, yes, I've been waiting for this episode. I had to wait 87 other episodes to get here. My goodness.
I don't know if it's that action-packed.
My name is Jeffrey W. Ingram, and I am a IT person.
And fantasy author.
And all-around strange person who likes to talk in sometimes strange voices.
And I'm Kristen Ingram. I'm a CPA and CEO of Ingram Digital Media, which is our company that helps you really, focus in, helps you kind of cut the crap out of your business so that you can focus on the important things. We do a lot of the research that you don't have the time to do for your small business. And we love learning new things, and we love sharing those things with you.
Yes. And we love watching our listeners and our clients succeed, which is really the thing that is better than money, but we do take money.
This is going to be a really bizarre episode, and we're only about 2 minutes in. So stay tuned.
That's right.
So, we thought this would be an interesting episode to do because when we work with small business owners, Jeff has his background in IT. Accounting and Focus is a website that we own that drives 80 to 100,000 unique viewers to the site every month. And as we're looking to revamp that site to even, to get the numbers even higher, we're really looking at navigation because navigation is the way that you tell your business's story on the web.
Yeah. And one thing I found, which actually was kind of a struggle when we're thinking of the name for the episode, was if you go to the Bob when you do a Google search, you'll see the suggested results, the things people are typing in along the lines of what you just searched. And they all seem like something I would type in, which to me says business owners aren't paying attention to this, which is kind of funny because I know a lot who get hung up over the tiniest font change or a little minute change in white space from this side to that side of an image. And that stuff is nice, but the navigation is the most important thing about your website. And I don't think most small business owners who, especially the ones that rely on websites, understand that that's more important than the pretty font. That's more important than everything outside of the ability for the site to accept money.
Right, exactly. So we're going to go through some questions that you should be asking yourself before you create your navigation, how to put elements into your navigation that's going to make it easier for your customers to find what they're looking for, and kind of things that you can do to influence their behavior on what they actually click on.
Yeah. And the other great thing is too is when you start following some of these practices, you're going to find it actually can benefit you in SEO terms too. So these are, you'll find that especially with search engines getting smarter, they're trying to look at things the way the search engine company thinks customers look at things. And if your site isn't set up for that, and I have to be honest, none of our sites are great on this.
But they will be.
But they will be.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed. We didn't really think about navigation when we put together Accounting and Focus. And we realized that even though the site is doing amazingly well because of the content, if we improve the navigation, I think that we could probably triple the views on that site.
Okay, so the first thing you really need to ask yourself, and this is the thing that most people do fail at, and which with the kind of focus was a primary failure when we initially created the site. What is the purpose of the site? And it's not to deliver content. It's actually not even to sell stuff. It might include those things, but what's the purpose? The purpose of the site is to interface with your customer, dream customer, avatar, whatever you want to call it, and bring them into your story.
Yeah, exactly. So, as Jeff said, selling stuff is great. Delivering content is great. But this is the only thing online that you own where you will interface with customers.
Yes. It's the one pureness of yourself online. Facebook kind of is, as long as Facebook allows you to do it the way that you want to. And the same with all the social media. If you're on free platforms, you might actually not perfectly be able to do it either because of the restrictions of the platforms that like Blogger or WordPress.com might impose on free accounts. So the thing is, if you do have your self-hosted site, it's purely you, and it always will be. And that's the great thing and you can make tactical changes as things change over time, or as you learn, you can make improvements to it. So it's not about perfection, but if you have a good idea of your navigation, one that will help you create a better SEO site if you have that long-term strategy to gain traffic. And it will also help customers flow through your site. You're encouraging them to go in multiple directions. But how do you do that well? How do you do it poorly?
Right. And, once you kind of have your purpose, then you need to ask yourself, who are you serving? Because it's really important not only in the design, the look of your site, but also in the navigation, because different age groups interact with sites differently. Men and women interact with sites differently. And so it's important for you to understand, that's why we've said numerous times on this show, you need to know who your ideal customer is. You need to know who that ideal prospect is, because that will help determine a lot about your navigation.
And it's really fun too, because the second thing that you should look at before you start building your navigation or your website, if you haven't started yet, is who will it serve? And I always like that language, because I think sometimes as business owners, we forget that we're serving our customers, and that's a mistake. But the avatars, the dream customers, whoever we're interacting with, our job is to serve them, and they exchange money with us for that. Or sometimes they exchange exposure for it if it's free content. So, but remember, it's always from a point of service that you're providing your products to people or services. That would be a shorter stretch if you're thinking services to serve.
Okay. What content do you have?
Yeah.
So what components are you going to have on your website? So if you go to Small Biz Life, the main content we have is the show notes for the podcast, right? And you can actually listen to the podcast there. So that's like a prominent button on the website, right? You should have some content on your website. Maybe it is a photo gallery if you're doing something that's very visual so people can see examples of your work. It could be written content. It could be videos. It could be podcasts. But it's really hard for people to make a decision about whether or not to work with you if there's no content on your website.
Yes.
Right? Because remember, this is all about serving. And so, what kind of content do you have? And if you don't have content, what kind of content do you want to
Are
have?
you planning to deliver? Yeah.
Exactly.
Because this is definitely much easier if you started off correctly. And it's much more difficult once you're live. As all things are. That's why you have the whole Six Sigma movement in the world of big business, which is if you can eliminate errors before you get to production, you'll save money in the long run. So if you're listening to this before you've launched a website, good for you. Worry about this. Don't worry about the perfect font.
Yep, exactly. What characters will your site talk about? So what do you mean by characters?
So essentially, since you're going to be telling stories from your site, stories of successes, of failures. Who are the people you can talk about? I'm a big believer as a small business owner, you are the primary attractive character for your business. People are going to be doing business with you. They want to know a bit about you. And you have to choose how and in what way you're going to deliver yourself to them. But beyond that, it could be characters like clients, case studies, the people you want to talk about. You always want to develop like a character in a novel, because it's more interesting for people to read or learn about those things.
Yeah, and if you are an HQ member, which is our paid monthly membership site, we actually went into a lot of detail on this this month when we were talking about building funnels. So if this is something you want to learn more about, go to smallbizlife.com/HQ and check out our monthly membership site.
Woohoo!
So the next thing you got to think about is, what are your customers' problems? And I want to talk about this with the next one as well, is how can you solve them?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, it's, a lot of times when I go to a website for a client, like say we're reviewing the website, it's really hard to figure out like what problems you're trying to solve for people and how you solve them. It drives me crazy when I go to a website and it takes me 6 or 7 clicks to actually get to what you're trying to sell.
Yeah. And a pro tip, if it takes someone 6 or 7 clicks to get to that, they're probably never going to find it.
Right. One big thing to think about is the deeper somebody has to go into your site to find what they want, every single click, you're going to have drop off. And that's why, and I don't know that you have this in here, but Google Analytics has a really great tool. Is it like, I can't remember if it's called the site
user
map,
flow?
the user flow. And you can actually see where people come into your website and how they move through and when they drop off.
If you get past 3 interactions, you're having a very good day.
Right.
And that's not to say you can't, and sometimes you will, but the majority of people are going, you're really trying to get them to get to at least a second page.
Right.
That will help your SEO a lot. If you can get them beyond that, that's great. But really, you have to imagine that, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but there are a certain number of layers you kind of want to think about for a site. And really the thing is, you can't do everything within a website, and you shouldn't try. But the great thing is, with email marketing, with ads in Facebook or Google, you can drive people to landing pages and create alternative paths into your site. So the thing is, but when they come to your homepage, what is the experience going to be? Who's it for? And the biggest reason we talk about customers' problems and how you're going to solve them is, one of the mistakes when we develop our avatar is we think of our avatar at this, usually the beginning point of time, when we start interacting with them. We never think about how our products or services are going to benefit them and what they'll look like, and then have products beyond those to keep luring them deeper into you as an ecosystem. Think of yourself as like a micro environment. And so the big thing to think is, going back to the funnel, is how does a dream customer look? What are the problems you're solving, and how do they move through them?
Right. And next week, we're going to do an entire episode on that ideal customer and moving them through those stages.
Yeah.
So, make sure that you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, because you're going to want to get next week's episode, because we really dive deep into that topic.
Now, if you notice, as we're talking about this is very similar to what we talk about with stories. How do you do storytelling in your business? And your website really is a way of presenting a story. And, the thing to remember is, good stories are clear. They're not always pretty, and they're not always clever. Some of the best dialogue written out there is very messy, because it appears the way people talk. And where your site itself is probably not going to appear the way people talk, the thing is, the clarity of it, so they understand the message, is the most important thing. Pretty and clever are nice. If you can do all 3, that's great. But if you can only do one, it has to be clear.
Right. So I think you can think of your homepage as kind of the introduction to your story. One thing I notice when I go to a lot of small business websites is that they kind of sort of tell me what they do sometimes, but I should have clarity from your homepage on what it is that you'll do for me.
Yes. Right off the bat.
Right.
But yeah, that's getting a bit into web design, but that's true. But as we apply that to navigation, you need links and stuff to move people around. And the thing is, like Kristen says, right off the bat, you need to know what's happening here, because you're trying to attract in your dream customer. And if your dream customer comes to your site and they can't tell what you do, they might leave, they might bounce. And as we know from SEO, bounce is bad.
Right. But that's kind of, part of the navigation, I think, is
to keep them there for more than 2 seconds.
Right. So if they land on your homepage and they have to click on, 14 different things to figure out what it is that you do, they're probably not going to make it there.
Yeah.
And so I really think that the first part of good navigation is that first landing page that you have and making sure that it has a clear message.
As a clear message of who you are and what you do. That's why I'm a big fan where a lot of the bigger names that you see when you go to their websites now, they typically have 3 words describing themselves right by their headshot. I am an author, a podcaster, and this. There's usually 3 things right near the headshot of the person. But it becomes very clear in general what's there. And that should be enough to keep the audience there. And the other thing that we have a tendency to forget is stories are descriptive to help the audience understand the plot. And the plot is, how do they get stuff from you, the free stuff or the paid stuff? And this is something that I usually don't do a good job of because it's easy to fall back on it. But we use oversimplistic terms because we think they're descriptive, but they don't really say what we do. The most common one being, if I go to 95% of the websites right now, maybe a higher percentage, I will see either a services tab, a what we do tab, a solutions tab, a products tab, a store tab. I mean, I think you go to our websites right now, you might see some of those words there. A podcast tag. Those really aren't descriptive of what's there. Now, there might be a podcast there, but, can you use a small phrase? Can we be a little bit more descriptive with the type of content that we have for people? Because one, if we deal with customers over different parts of their path to becoming our dream customer, then different content is going to speak to them.
Right. So that's why, the more descriptive your terms can be. And I think, on the flip side of that, try not to be generic. So then let me give you a thing to ponder. Okay. So like, what would you use instead of services or products?
What service or product are you offering? Like, is it business coaching? That's a better term than services. So if you're a business coach, say business coaching. Don't say services. Okay. Because they have an idea of what they're clicking when they go through that.
Okay. So you might have say you're an author and a coach. So you might have a books button and you might have a coaching button. Exactly. Instead of having services, right? Be really specific.
Yeah.
So if you're like an IT company, you would probably have links for the different.
You might have multiple ones, depends on the kind of services. Like if you do website design, if you do website programming, if you do virus checks, whatever you do, you have a couple different tabs even if different people coming to your site are looking for different services.
Okay, so then let me go with, because you also say that you need to keep the story simple and you should avoid having more than 7 items on your navigation bar.
And what's important? What's the path through? So the thing is, your navigation bar should never go over 7 items. It just becomes overwhelming and you lose things.
So what if, okay, so let me ask you this. Could you, like, say you're an IT company and you work with residential and commercial, could you use those and then
Yes.
bring people in
If
instead of just saying services?
if those terms are meaningful to the customers,
Right.
they, and I think enough businesses use commercial, residential, where that might make sense.
Or residential and business
Yeah.
or something like that.
But the thing I think about is the navigation says your top level, your first layer of navigation. And I'm a big believer that you can go up to 3 levels of navigation in a generic website. If you need to go more than that, that's where you need to really think about landing pages and other alternative paths into your site. Otherwise, you're putting so much information and so many different paths within there, no one's going to look. You just created the labyrinth.
Right. And I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I do not like drop-down menus in the navigation bar. A lot of times they do not work well on mobile. And they really clutter up the site. And I think when people start putting drop-down menus, they think that they can put like 45,000 things in those menus.
Well, let's look down at the fourth from the bottom tag here. Please, for the love of God, do not use drop-down.
Okay, good.
And there are use cases where there is a benefit to drop-down menus, but even then, you have to be careful what you put in there, because the problem is, from a usability standpoint, if they scroll open, that screws with the eyes. So you put over, and then all of a sudden, like 30 things, and some of these sites, I swear, have, like she said, 800,000 subtags. I think it's ugly, and it is proven. Like, if you do some research on usability and drop-down menus for navigation bars, you're going to find out that it's not very usable for customers. And it creates all of this behind-the-scenes coding gobbledygook that search engines also struggle with. So not only will customers have trouble getting through it, search engines will have trouble getting through it. So you lose on 2 fronts. Do not do drop-down menus. And if you do, and there are use cases for them, which means there are reasons to use them, I guess I should say. But, very limited options within there. And really, it's a sign that the person who designed it, and I've probably used these before, so I'm not perfect here, no judgment, really didn't think through how the people are going to be navigating through the site. Or they're hoping people will just know. Like if you go to guarddual.com and go to World, there's a drop down for Guarddual. Like most people who are going to be going to guarddual.com probably know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So if I want them to get to a different world for my site, if I ever create a different world that I put up there, I'll need to be specific and take them to that.
Right. Yeah, no, for me, especially when I'm on mobile, right, which I do most of my browsing is on mobile. And you go to a site, you click on what you think is a link, but it actually turns into a drop down. It takes up the entire screen, and then mobile has a really hard time retracting those. Because a lot of times, like if you click it again, it doesn't retract, or maybe it will pop up again.
That's also just the poorly designed, non-responsive menu. I mean, a decent menu now will just drop straight down. So it'll usually be a button at the top that has 3 or 4 bars on it. You click on that button and it will open up the menu options, and the sub-menus will open up within those.
But if you're trying to get rid of it, because my issue is a lot of times it's hard to get rid of them.
I would get rid of it and take time to think about the flow of people onto your site, what's going to lure, your customer at different levels to different places and bring them in that way. Don't try and it's lazy. It really is. It's laziness where you sit there and go, but if I give them all the options, it will save them time. No, it won't, folks. Mm-hmm. It will not. It'll save them time on your site because they'll bounce.
Yeah. So, what I would much rather see is if I click on something on the navigation bar, you bring me to a page, where it might have like links at the top and then information, rather than me coming up with this humongous menu and not knowing where to go. And
the other good thing is think about this, when you have those simple few terms on there, and they show up on every page, those 7 terms that we're talking about that, should be the maximum in your navigation bar, but they're little phrases instead of the more generic terms. If 95% plus of companies use services or some thesaurus variation thereof, you're never going to win that battle. But when you focus on smaller phrases to create SEO off of in a long-term strategy, you're much more likely to be able to do good in small phrases than in more generic, well-known phrases. So think of it in a little bit more context of what your customers are either asking for or looking for when they do searches. And you know what? Just go to Google, and I'll put a link to AdWords keyword research, but you don't even need to go there. Just go to Google and look at what comes up as you start searching for things. And sometimes you'll get into a situation like I am, where you're like, these are all people who are industry people who are using these keywords. Mm-hmm. So either I can't think to what the customer thinks, or they're not searching.
Right. And I mean, I think that there are some times where, like if you own a restaurant, you need to have menu on your navigation bar, because that is something that people look for.
I would agree with that. And like I said, there are always use case differences. And you probably, but it could also be like salads, sandwiches. You could have stuff like that where it's broken down a bit more as well too. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't necessarily need to be the word menu. But it does help because so many restaurants don't put up an actual menu. And when they do, it's like this downloadable PDF, which I find ultimately frustrating.
Yeah. If you're listening and you own a restaurant, please, please, please do not put your menu up like as the only option being a PDF. If some people they like having the PDF, don't make that the only option to view your menu.
Yeah.
Because on mobile, it's obnoxious. Mm-hmm. And most people, when they're looking up restaurants, they're on their phones because they're hungry.
But at least the ones that have just the PDF, thank you for at least having that. For those restaurants that don't have any menu up there, I'll probably never visit. So
yeah. Okay, so we're thinking about now. Let me ask you a question: the 7 items in the navigation bar. I know a lot of people like putting their social links. So, like the little Facebook icon, the Twitter icon, the Instagram icon. Is that part of the 7?
No. Your navigation bar is like home, about us, services, contact us.
Okay. Well, I know a lot of people, though, in their navigation bar, they actually have those.
Well, it's usually in the header, and it might even be there, but I'm talking about the things people are looking for there.
Okay.
Social buttons are things you're hoping people use.
Right.
But they're not part of the navigation of the site.
Okay. And you want to make sure that when you design this navigation bar, because I've seen some people that have done a really good job on the desktop version, right? And their navigation bar looks beautiful, but then you go to mobile and all of those phrases kind of crunch together and wrap and look kind of funny.
Which is another thing that makes it difficult. Yeah. It's very important now. If you, and this is more for general design, when you're working and building a website, or you have a website and you want to see how it works responsively, just make the browser window smaller. And if you take away all of the width you can from the browser, that's about the width of a phone. So you can just sort of stretch it out and see what it looks like as it stretches out or it shrinks. Because there's so many different screen sizes now, it's impossible to keep up with all of them. But you want to see a generally good responsive site will move an entire thing at one time.
And I do notice that there are a lot of themes now where they will, when it gets to phone size, it will actually get rid of the navigation and put up like a little icon that you click, which will bring up, it brings up like a little navigation menu.
Yep.
I think that looks much better than when the responsive theme tries to like squish it all.
I think most of the nicer themes now do that, and it works very well mobily, and it will open and close a menu, which is kind of like a drop-down menu, but it does kind of work better on a phone than an actual drop-down menu. Yeah,
that when I've seen that built into like WordPress sites and other responsive sites, like that works really well. I think that's my only That's my only exception, I think, to the drop-down
technically
menu
what it
looking
is,
things.
it's a hidden div. I'm sorry. We won't go there.
Yeah, because I have no idea what that is. Okay, so we've talked about, I think we've talked about generic terms already, and the importance of that. I know that we've talked about this before, but not in terms of navigation. It's really important to make sure that you understand the terminology that your customers are using, right? And we've talked about this in regards to SEO. We've talked about this, in terms of like messaging, but I think a lot of us forget that when we design our navigation.
Or when we name our episodes. And I'm as bad as anyone here because it's like, oh, this is a cool name. I like this name. This name makes sense. And then no one gets it but you. Like if I had gone with something what I originally thought of for this episode, it would have been something that, like, if I just took the time and typed it in Google, I would have realized that only people like me would have any idea what I was talking about.
Right.
So you think it's basic, but it's maybe not, So sometimes you have to look at different ways to get people into the ideas. But also think about, especially when you get a huge library of content built up, you don't need a blog tab. Maybe you have 2 or 3 tabs to get them into content, because usually as your library gets bigger, you start forming major categories of things you talk about. So like in WordPress, you can do sort of category navigation instead of straight to blog navigation. And that will help people find the content they want. The easier you make it for them to find the content that they want, the more likely they are to spend more time on your site.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that that's really important. And I want you to think about 2 different things with your website. I want you to look at why are people going to your website, right? And what are they looking for? You want to make sure that that is prominent in the navigation.
Yes.
And then what do you want them to do on your website? Because they might come in with one objective, but you've got a different objective, right? So maybe they're coming in because they want to learn something, but you want to get them into your free opt-in, right? So you might have somewhere on your navigation bar, like right now we have the focus planner, right? Free focus planner. You might want to have that as a link on your navigation bar. So when people get to your website, they go, ooh, it's a free thing.
Yeah.
Right. So what they're doing is they're coming in for one purpose, but you are redirecting them to another purpose.
And remember, if your target are English-speaking people read left to right, and they read top to bottom. Different languages. If you're targeting, you're probably maybe not listening to the show, but you follow the pattern of how people read, because that's how people's eyes are trained to move. And if you actually go against that, you will actually disturb their minds, and that might force them to bounce. So don't try and force people by using clever images and stuff to get them to do stuff backwards, and realize that their brain works that way and it's trained that way. Go along with it. Use those interruptions only if you want to interrupt.
Right. So you really want to make sure that, unless you want them to go to your about page, don't make your about page the first link in your navigation bar.
Yes. Yes.
Because that's typically like one of the last things you want them to go see. If they get there, that's cool. But if you're trying to direct them through your website in a certain way, probably the first thing, if you have an opt-in, is you want that opt-in to be like the first link.
Yep. If you want them to call you, put the phone number more to the left and to the top of the page. And the thing is, right, we've talked a lot about the navigation bar, but remember too, navigation should be more than your bars. You need links within your pages. If they're on a page about, content, and you have a service that is tied to it, put a link in there. It's a soft sell, and maybe you get 1 or 2 people a year who actually use it that buy from you, but make it easy for people to get to where you want them to go. And it's usually for most people, it's either that page where they're buying something from you, or it's that page where they're contacting you so you can start a conversation, because maybe it's a little bit more complicated, the pricing schemes, because it's like a coaching type thing or something.
Right. But that's, the easier that you can make it for people to buy from you or contact you, the better. Don't bury that stuff.
And the other thing to keep in mind too is over time you're going to build up certain numbers of free giveaways, and as long as they're a free giveaway, keep in mind what your library free giveaways are. So maybe the current one you're pushing is a free software holding nuclear bomb with games inside of it, and so if they and that's what you have the big banner for. The pop-ups are all for that. But if you're in an article where there's something that's a better free giveaway on your latest post, embed the thing that makes more sense as a giveaway in the text, halfway down or at the bottom of that post, because it's more tightly connected to the content on that page. You don't need to have the same giveaway all over the site. And as you get more giveaways, as long as they're a giveaway, keep them on the pages that are relevant.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with having, multiple giveaways, especially like if you're dealing with, say you work with residential and business customers, the same giveaway is not going to work for both.
Yeah.
So you might have one geared towards security for business and maybe security for residential. Yeah. And when you're developing different content, you're going to put links to different opt-in forms.
And also too, really think of your internal links as well, because they add authority to pages within your site for search engines. So, if you always talk about social media, have a blog post about social media, and it talks about all the generic stuff about social media, and always link back to that whenever you talk about social media, or at least once in every article where you talk about social media, because it'll add relevance to the search engine looking at your site going, they're searching for social media on the site, give them this post.
Yep.
And, it's the small things that over time, which is the biggest thing that aids searchability, is, time and content, is the more of those kind of what they call like SEO base pages you have built up with internal links pointing around your site and external links pointing towards really well respected sites. Both of those things will also aid the people who are on your site, and they will aid your site for SEO. And the other thing to remember, and this is an important one, which I forgot to put down here in my little bullet point list, when you link to an external site, never open it up in the same tab that they're in.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes.
Open it up, into a new window. That way they can get to that because that's what they wanted to do. You delivered it to them. But when they close that down, your site's still there.
Yeah. And I do that for internal links as well. Like I want to, if you're linking to another page on my site.
I have 2 rules of thumb for that.
Okay.
If you're like in blog content, like that kind of content, I prefer new tags. If I'm within like static pages that have a purpose, I don't use new windows.
Okay.
So like if you click on that, like that embedded thing that talks about, that coaching service, you're going to go to that page and it will get rid of the page that you were on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. And if you go to the show notes for this episode, if you go to smallbizlife.com, click on podcasts, go to the show notes for episode 88, we're going to have a link for internal link best practices and external link best practices.
Yeah. Just a few other things to keep in mind as you're doing your navigation, because remember, it's not just the bars, it's the text, it's the content. Everywhere is a way to do it, but keep it simple.
Right.
The KISS principle is so important.
Now, I know that this isn't navigation. How do you feel about like the bars at the top of the website for people to sign up for free stuff? Like your opt-in.
They work a little bit.
But they're not as effective as pop-ups, though.
They're not as effective as pop-ups, but they do work.
Okay.
And they take up very little real estate. I think there are a few things you have to do if you use them. And this is, once again, more of a website design thing, but you have to give the person the ability to hide it.
Yep.
And it needs to remain active at least that entire visit. Better ones I know will come with the ability so it'll only come up once every 10 days. They do work. There has been talk, and Google might start smacking those down if they have not already, because Google does not like those. Because people don't like them, but they work.
Yeah. So, okay. So back to navigation. Does like sidebar navigation still work? It seems like a lot of people are moving away from that.
That's more of like a design taste thing. And what she's talking about is sidebars are typically when you look at a site and it looks like there's a menu down like the left or horribly chosen the right side of a website, and then you have a bunch of content underneath there. It is right side navigation is almost useless. Right side should never be used for navigation, and might be a little bit better today. But once again, people read over that way. You want the navigation prominent; it should be to the left or to the top.
Okay.
I think people like the way they think it looks cleaner when it's at the top.
Mm-hmm. And I imagine, and I think,
but there are definitely use cases where left hand. Like I think Accounting Focus is going to go to a left-handed navigation because it makes a lot of sense for the type of site it is.
Right. What about bottom navigation?
You should have bottom navigation. If they get all the way to the bottom of the site, and it's not necessarily going to be everything in the top 7, but it's the most essential things typically at the bottom. A way to get back to the homepage. A way to get to your services, but not called services. Mm-hmm. A way to get to your contact us. If you have a sitemap, those are usually down there. Very, very just key things at the bottom. Just in case they do get down there, you don't want to discourage them from going somewhere else.
Well, I think especially too, like if you don't have a long form homepage, it's easier for people to see the bottom navigation. I know with Small Biz Life,
you don't do it for the ones, you do it just the opposite. It's when you scroll off of the navigation. So, it's more important when you have a longer form page that you have bottom navigation.
Okay.
And you can also add in what they call bookmarks, which aren't like bookmarks in a browser, but they're when you click on something, it will take you to the top, or it'll take you to certain parts of that page if it's really long. Those are a pretty good idea on really long pages for navigation as well too.
Well, it's like
I don't like pages that long.
Well, I know like one thing that we did with Small Biz Life, because we had the navigation bar was kind of doing its thing, and there were enough links up there. I don't think there were 7, but there were enough. Mm-hmm. But what we did down at the bottom is we created a bar down at the bottom that says, listen here, or, how to listen or whatever. And it's got all the different services that we're on. Yeah. So instead of taking up like a lot of real estate on the homepage or trying to stuff it in the navigation bar, we created this little navigation area in the bottom. Yeah. And I think like that was, and there's another one, like you can follow us on all the social that we're on from there.
Once again, I don't consider that bottom navigation. To me, that's content navigation. That's in text navigation. It's at the bottom of a post. But when I think of a bottom navigation, I think of stuff in the footer. That very bottom row that sometimes
No, that's what there is on Small Biz Life if you go to the homepage.
Oh, on just the homepage, you mean? Okay.
Yeah, it's on the
I know
homepage.
It's on the blog pages. I didn't realize it was on the homepage.
Yeah. But so it's kind of, it's something that it's important stuff that we want people to see, but it's not like, it's not something that has to be like up in the, in the header navigation.
And I wouldn't put that in the header.
Yeah.
And some people do when it's a podcast, but, Small Biz Life to me is something bigger than a podcast. So,
yeah. But so, so kind of what you have a whole bunch of different places where you can put navigation. You can put it in the, on the top of the page, you can put it on the left side of the page, you can put it on the bottom, use that real estate well.
And another very common practice today is typically logos almost always are internal navigation back to the homepage. I don't know if anyone outside of IT really knows or cares about that, though.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's always something that I check when I go to a site. Like,
you do check that? Okay.
Like if I'm on a site and I want to go back to the homepage, I usually click. I usually click the banner. So that's something that I would definitely check with your site to make sure that your site does that for the people that know that is a possibility.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is like I think a lot of people know that works. So do you think you can remove the home button, or do you still need the home button?
I think you still need a home button. I haven't done enough research on that. I think you should call it the home button. Most people know what a home button is. Most people...
or you could use like a little icon image thing that says...
You can use icons. And icons are something that are very good. If you have a big website, you probably want icons to help guide people like you understand that you're in the people portion of the site, or you're in this portion of the site, or that portion of the site. And definitely the home button works well there too. The thing I suggest is, especially for like your services, don't turn them into images. You want text and icon. You don't want just icon, and you don't want just images. Like sometimes people will do that. They'll take the words and they'll turn to an image. Computers aren't good at reading images as words, so don't do that.
Right. Although Samsung phones are getting better at that.
Samsung phones are supposedly getting better at that.
Yeah. So one of the things that's supposed to be in the new S8 is you could take a picture, and if it's in a foreign language, it will translate the text from the picture.
If they can identify the letters.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
Yes.
So I think that's coming in the future, but you're right, it's not there yet. You definitely want to make sure that, like if you're using like, a home image for your home button, if somebody puts their mouse over that or their finger over that, it should say home, right? Like you can have like the text pop up that says home.
I don't like icon only, and that might just be a personal thing. Icons are good because it builds association, and if people do have a tendency, they go back to your site a lot, icons become faster ways for them to navigate. But you need words.
Okay.
I'm a believer you need words.
So you can't just have a home picture and assume
I
people
wouldn't just
know.
put a home picture, no.
Okay.
I would have a home picture with the word home next to it.
But then doesn't that take up more real estate in the navigation?
I don't use icons.
Ah, okay.
But once again, icons make a lot of sense if it's a site that people spend a lot of time on. And, it's like if you have an app, like your Nosby app, a lot of icons in there. It makes sense. It's easier to retain and keep and understand what's going on. Most websites don't benefit from them.
Yeah. And I think, and this is kind of one, I love Kajabi, but one of the things that drives me crazy, I am a big believer that images should be part of your navigation. So like if you have a picture of something on your homepage and you're talking about, booking a coaching consult, I should be able to click on that picture and go to the same page. And so if you are embedding pictures into your homepage, make those another way for people to navigate.
Yeah, a lot of times I do that in WordPress, where it's like I'll make the image a link and then the text underneath it saying what's there, a link as well too. I would imagine, I think in Kajabi, you'd probably be forced to actually customize to add the HTML to.
Well, I know for the blog posts, you can't, like when you're on the blog page or the podcast page, and that's one thing that drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But I think they're changing that too.
But we're changing themes again, so.
Yeah. But, but I think that's something that I think a lot of people don't think about, right? They just have the image and you click on an image on their website and it goes to the image on a page by itself because that's what WordPress does by default.
Well, I know I got chastised by Mike on the other site because I have that picture Gardual nutshell that I call it, and then it has like blog, podcast, world. And so he was trying to click on those like they were images.
I have yelled at you about that too. Because that's the thing, it's like I see the word blog and I'm like, oh, click. And it doesn't go there. And that's the thing. It's like I think people have gotten so used to interacting with images that your image needs to go somewhere meaningful.
And we could do a podcast episode talk about image maps, but we're not going to do that here.
Oh, we'll have to do that at some point, like website heat maps.
Not heat maps, image maps.
Oh, image maps.
That's where you could take like one image and have multiple links within one image.
Ooh.
But that's not really a podcast episode. That's maybe like a free video.
That would have to be like a YouTube video or something, yeah. Well, maybe when you update Gardual,
Yes.
you could record that and we'll put it up on YouTube. Okay. So I know that we gave you like a lot of stuff to think about.
Definitely go to the show notes for this episode. We'll have it all there. But it's really good to be thoughtful with your navigation, and if you're either in our community group, the Small Biz Life community group, or in obviously the HQ group, you definitely get responded to. But you get stuck in your navigation, ask, and someone's going to tell you. But remember, the more descriptive you can be, the more aid you give your customers and search engines.
Yeah. So, if this is something, if you're sitting there going, I would absolutely love to do this, but I don't know how I'm going to fit this into my schedule because I'm ridiculously busy. Go to smallbizlife.com/focus and download our free daily focus planner. Okay. It's a planner that you can print out every day, helps you plan your morning. And what you can do is like just, put maybe a task for the first day is just to look at your navigation and say, okay, if I was a customer, right, what would I go through on the site? How would I go through this site? And if you don't like the way that works, then, I would put, fix one or two navigation things every day. And make that one of your 3 must-do items on your focus planner, which again, you can get at smallbizlife.com/focus, completely free.
Yeah. And I just want to say too, that this planner works. It's like the last couple weeks I've been having some pain issues because of an old knee injury, and it spreads to the hip and maybe to the back and to the foot. It kind of goes all over.
Your butt's been a little tingly too.
My butt's been a little tingly. It's been a wild ride, but 6 months ago, before we had this, when I would get into a lot of pain, I would get almost nothing done. And now I'm not getting done as much as I want to because, yes, I'm in pain and that causes fatigue, but I'm still knocking off the important things every day. And that helps me stay focused and keep some momentum even in the pain. So it's a very beneficial thing. Really go to smallbizlife.com/focus. And this is a wonderful thing. It's helped me a lot, and I hope it'll help you too.
Great. So thank you so much. If you have any questions about this, the best way to reach us is in our free Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/smallbizlife. And let's start a conversation about navigation. Let's take a look at each other's websites and help each other out.
Yes.
All right. We will see you guys next week.
Excellent. This was Small Biz Life.